All right, can everybody hear me okay? Just want to check in and make sure. All right, it looks like it. Looks like my mic is working. Well, welcome. My name is Jennifer Hatfield. I am your host tonight, and a big thank you to Skylar and Study Right for having me for this webinar, Rock High School and College by Visualizing Your Time. Before we get started, I first want to just mention that you can type into the chat if there's something that you need, and Skylar or I will help you out if there's any tech issues, because sometimes those happen. So I would like to ask you a couple questions. As I said, before we jump in here, I've got a quick little poll. I like to know who's joining me in the audience. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you can go ahead and vote and let me know who you are. Are you a parent, a student, or a professional? I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right, great. Looks like so far we've got a really nice blend. Awesome. We've got a little bit of everything. So I'm going to go ahead, and looks like we have completely everything's even Steven, parents, students, and professionals. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll right now, and we will jump right in. All right, so this is me, and this is exactly what I look like tonight. In fact, I'm sitting at my desk just like this with my glasses on and my headset on. And as I said, I'm Jennifer Hatfield. I am a speech-language pathologist. Those initials after my name, if you're not familiar, mean Masters of Health Sciences, and the CCC is a Clinical Competence Certificate, which is a national certification, and then SLP, Speech-Language Pathologist, aka speech therapist. So before I even go into, a lot of people ask me, why in the world is a speech therapist, SLP, why in the world are you working on study skills? What makes you an expert on this? Well, I'll tell you. I have extensive coursework and knowledge in the brain, neurology, learning processes, and not just for typically developing individuals, but also for atypical development, and or if there is ever a known reason to delay development or change development, like a traumatic brain injury or some other thing that could happen. And all of that knowledge of typical and atypical development also helps me tremendously with just the run-of-the-mill students that just for whatever reason, they're just not picking up on those study skills. But more than being an SLP and a speech therapist and being an expert in study skills, I'm a mom. And I've been a mom for 19 years. I have two teenagers, one who is a freshman in college this year, who struggled with some study skills, very bright, but just couldn't seem to manage time and study. And my daughter, who is a freshman in high school, we're kind of in the trenches right now and really working on getting her systems in place, whereas my son is really just kind of fine-tuning some systems and doing really well with those. So I like to say that I have this professional background, but it's really my background as a mom, having to deal with this on that end and having two kids who are struggling with study skills that have really allowed me to hone my skills and take both sides of that and blend them together. And so the insight that I have into creating systems and tools and programs like this, I'm just very thankful for that. So when we think about time management struggles, we need to think about what the problem is. So many times we throw a tool at it, right? We throw a planner at it or something, but we really need to think about what the problem is. And the problem is that poor time managers can't visualize their time. You see, being able to tell time is very different than being able to visualize or conceptualize time. Schools these days, and even I would say even when my two teens were coming up through school, preschool and kindergarten age, the schools aren't really focusing on that concept of time as much as they should. They're focusing on that telling of time, right? What does the clock say? It says 2:15. What is it going to be in 15 minutes? 2:30, right? We're not talking about that concept of time and the passing of time or elapsed time. And so what do we see? We see that students struggle with this very skill. And that is the most important skill for time management, because that's why we start to have that breakdown when there's a problem with that. So we often think we have more or less time than we actually do, right? I mean, if you could see me raising my hand, I would say yes. There's still times that I can be guilty of that. But it happens a lot for people who are poor time managers, right? They're either, just rushing, or they're just kind of feeling like they're not even attempting to do anything and just have not a care in the world because they have no concept of time. Further, we have to be able to be good time managers. We have to be able to attach a time or a concept of time accurately to our typical activities. So let me explain. Like, do you really know how long it takes you to do 5 math problems if you're a student? Do you really know if it's 5 algebra problems, or, if you're doing slope and intercept or versus some other kind of math problem? One is going to take you longer than the other. You need to be able to have a really good concept of how much time that will take you. How long does it take you to write a paper? How long does it take you to get ready for work or school, or prepare a lesson for your class if you're a teacher? You might be in the ballpark, and this is where some people can manage their time adequately, but then if something throws them off, all bets are off. Everything just implodes. So if you're in the ballpark, you might seem like you're doing an okay job, but being close isn't always good enough when it comes to managing time. As I said, if somebody throws a wrench in your day and you get thrown off there with that time, you're going to be in trouble. So what do we need to do? We need to look at this concept of walking around with these inaccurate timetables in our mind. And I like to think of what I call these timetables as little, kind of like what you see in a comic strip where 2 people are talking back and forth and the little thought bubbles pop up, right? Or speech bubbles, and then if they're thinking to themselves, a thought bubble. I like to think of these timetables as being little thought bubbles that pop up in our minds when we think, okay, I've got to get to work by 9 o'clock, and I still have to get ready, and I have to, whatever it is, load the dishwasher, whatever your thing is in the morning, okay? And this little time, that's what we need to strive for, is we need to create these timetables in our mind. But we're walking around with these inaccurate timetables, and so we need to figure out how to solve that problem. And here is a great way to look at why this is such a problem. We underestimate the time, we overestimate the time, which leads to those inaccurate time representations or time thought bubbles that I'm talking about. So we're late, right? Whether it's physically late for something or if we're project or assignment, and that leads to chronic stress. And it just tables that we're walking around with, or lack of those little thought bubbles, that AKA timetables that pop up. If we throw the wrong tool at it to solve the problem, the cycle does continue. Now, I want to stop for just a second and talk about well-meaning parents, teachers, SLPs, friends, whomever is trying to help people out with poor time management. They say, oh, you're a poor time manager. Here's this planner. It's the best planner ever. That's all you need is a good planner. Well, there is a time and a place for a good planner, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But if we don't solve this inaccurate time representation, the planner will not work. Because we can write down and schedule our activities all day long. But if we don't have an accurate timetable going on and an accurate representation of time in our mind, we will still be poor time managers. And by the end of the day, we won't have accomplished much, and we will still be running behind, and we will still not be started on things we need to be started with, and we will still have chronic stress. So stop suggesting a planner to somebody as the first tool if they're having trouble with time management. So let's talk about this inaccurate time representation just a little bit more. So here are several representations where students typically, and professionals as well, especially if you're in a situation where you have things like midterm and end of semester, et cetera. these are very common areas where students will misrepresent their time with regard to school, especially college. So about this time of year, students often think that the end of the semester, we just passed midterm, right? But now we're moving on to end of the semester, and around this time of year, students often think that the end of the semester is very far away. They think, oh, man, that's around Christmas. No problem. My final exams? No problem. I have plenty of time. But if we look here on these calendars, and I do apologize, those do look a little blurry there. If we find ourselves on Tuesday, November 4th, all right, and we look that, okay, the final exams are going to occur in the week of probably the 15th through the 19th in most schools of December, but they could happen as early as the 8th through the 12th. Let's take a look at that. Here we are on the 4th, and let's go to this week, 15th through the 19th. That's 1, 2, oh, now wait a minute, we've got Thanksgiving in there. Nobody does anything when they go home for Thanksgiving, so we're not even counting that week. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 weeks, maybe 4.5 before those final exams are occurring. All right, that's not that much time, especially when you consider that final exams, you should really start studying about 3 weeks early, but hey, that puts us into Thanksgiving week, and as I said, nobody studies during Thanksgiving week, so look at this. It puts us in the week of the 17th through the 21st, and here we are on the 4th. So all that time that students think they have is really only 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, before they should really begin to prepare for that end of the semester. Same thing with summer break, right? Summer break, everybody says, oh, I'm going to, study for that SAT and really hit it hard. I'm going to take that course. I'm really going to get myself together over summer because everybody thinks summer is so long, right? And don't get me wrong, summer is a great time to tackle things like that. But it seems like this 4 months of time that we have. Even I still do this with summer. Something about, the warm weather and just it being light out later, we get skewed there in our timetable. And so we think we have more time than we do. And what happens? We don't do anything that first week off of school or work, that first week of summer. And then before we know it, August is here. And we haven't done anything, or we haven't even begun to get as far as we needed to get in whatever it was that we wanted to tackle. Students often also have this tendency, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. Sometimes I still do this last one with the all-day mentality. So if I look ahead in my schedule and I think, oh, wow, I don't have any clients on Thursday. Okay, I think I can put off writing whatever, if it's something I need to do for a webinar or a report or whatever it is. I can put that off because on Thursday I've got all day, right? Okay, so let's take a look at this concept of all day. What students often forget, and also us, we forget that part of that all day time is taken up by eating at least 3 times a day, right? And if you're going out to eat, you're going to add way more time to that. If you have to cook it, more time even there. So some of our time in all day is spent sleeping. If it's a day that you have class, even if they're spread apart, you still have to consider that time that you're walking to and from class or driving to and from class, so travel time, then the actual class time. If you have any type of practicing you need to do, if you play an instrument, or if you are in an athletic practice or a choir, you have to add that in. And then the very typical times during our day of getting ready, preparing to go to bed, things like that. So all of a sudden, this concept of all day becomes 4, 5, 6 hours, right? In some cases. Now, that might be enough for me to do what I have to do, but for a student who puts off studying for an exam because they have all day to do it in a few days, that's not a whole lot of time if they haven't been keeping up with their time management and they've been a poor time manager. So we need to let go of that all-day mentality. So finally, right, the solution for all of this madness is to visualize your time. And if we can do that, if we can fix those inaccurate time representations, it's amazing what can happen. So part of the solution is something I call a timetable, and I believe Skylar put that up for you that you can download from the, there's a link up in the chat box, I believe you would see it in, or in the notes section. You can click on that, and then I believe he also told me that he'd be sending it after the webinar as well. So you will get a copy of this very same thing that you can have and use, and I'll explain how to use it here in just a second. So if we look at this timetable chart, we have 4 columns, one for activity, start time, end time, and total time. So what I want you to do, or if you're learning this for somebody else, you want to use it with clients or students, you have your students write down every activity, and I mean every activity. Brushing teeth, start time, end time, total time. How long does it take you to get dressed? Start time, end time, total time. You may even want to combine those 3 together and call it getting ready. Start time, end time, total time, okay? Guys, get the idea? I want you to do this at least for a few days, but the best case scenario is that you would keep track of all of your activities for a week or at least a couple of weeks so that you can see over time, visualizing how much time you spend on each activity in your life. Then you're going to review that chart, right? And you're going to see where the problem is. You may have been really off on some of these things. Now, a lot of times my clients will say, but Jennifer, I got sidetracked, so I didn't write down the actual time. I got sidetracked while I sat down to do those 5 math problems, and before I knew it, a half an hour had passed, and I know I can do it in less time. Don't cheat yourself. If you sat down to do those math problems and you got distracted, you need to write down the actual start and end time. Why? Because it happens. And you do need to begin to look at some patterns of your time, and maybe it does take you a little bit longer to do math versus, I don't know, English homework or world history or something like that. And then you can begin to visualize where some of the breakdown is occurring, okay? And you will become more aware of those things. So don't be too picky on what you write down, okay? I mean it. Put down like packing your backpack or how long did it take me to eat. Don't forget those leisure time activities also. And then, as I said, keep them so that you can, look at them and really gain some important information. So you are going to be able to download this. Please feel free to, copy as many copies as you need so that you can, have a good amount of data for you to begin to take control of visualizing your time. So now I have another quick poll for us before I go on to another great tool to use to help you visualize your time. I'm going to get that up and going here. I'd like to know what kind of calendar, if you use a calendar, what kind of calendar do you use? Paper, electronic, or both? So you can go ahead and start voting there. All right, I'm going to give it another second here. All right, I don't think everyone has voted here, but I'm going to go ahead and I was going to show you the results here. I'm sorry. Okay, so we had, out of the people that voted, everybody said they used an electronic calendar. I'm a little surprised at that, but I'm really kind of glad that that happened because it really leads nicely into this next section for us to talk about. So another way then to visualize your time better, so kind of the next step, right? We're going to bring in that calendar system, that planner. Everybody usually starts here, right? But this isn't where you want to start because it just, as I said earlier, it just won't help because you're basically just writing down things and you're not really thinking about the time spent on those activities. So we have many different calendar options, but using a calendar isn't as easy as it sounds because you have to find what works for you. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story about myself. I use my iPhone and Google Calendar for scheduling clients. It's connected to my online scheduling system. I love it because it just allows people to go on and schedule when they need to, and it pops into my calendar. If I need to schedule things, it blocks that time off, et cetera, et cetera. But I found that when I got my iPhone a couple years ago and I started to use that system, I just felt a little more anxiety or stress. I don't even know how to explain it because I stopped using my paper calendar. And I wasn't writing anything down. I'm typing it into my iPhone or into my Google Calendar online. So you have to find what works for you. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because in the recent past, I started to use an actual, book type planner where I can lay out my whole month. I've got a week view, I've got a day view, and I use both. And I absolutely love it. And I feel my anxiety that I was having melting away. And it was a really good experience for me because the light bulb went on for me. Oh my gosh, so many of our students rely on these electronic calendars now, and they are wonderful. But we really should think about using both kinds, because when we write things in our own hand on our calendar with a pen or pencil, it goes into a different area of the brain, which is more likely to be stored and remembered than when we are typing something in. And it helps us to visualize, like on a Google Calendar, when I pull that up, or whatever electronic calendar you might be using, it's just not the same concept of being able to see your week or your month as laying out a paper calendar and seeing that, okay, this week I have this, but oh my gosh, next Friday I have that exam in biology. For some reason, it's much, much better for students and really everyone. And so those of you that are, putting in to use an electronic calendar, great, but I would encourage you, especially if you are struggling with time management a bit, to consider a paper calendar, getting it's just another calendar that you can write in your own hand and see if it helps you retain that information a little bit better and manage your time better. So we have electronic calendars, we have paper calendars. We want to make sure that whatever system we're using, that we can focus in on a day, we can focus in on a week to look at that longer span of time and visualize that, and then also look at the month. And just really quickly, I have another little story. I've been trying to get my daughter to use in her binder system that I set up for her, a good old-fashioned calendar, paper calendar at the front of it. And she was fighting me, no, I use my phone. Okay. But she started to use my system, finally, with the calendar in the front of her binder with all of her folders that she keeps all her notes in. And she actually came to me about a week after that and said, Mom, that works so well, because I sit down on Sunday nights and I go online and I look at what's coming up in my classes and I write those down. And she said it's so helpful to be able in one glance to see that, in a week I've got 3 quizzes, and then I can start to prepare and plan my study time this week. So give it a try. Got a stubborn teenager like I do, give it some time, for them to buy into it. But definitely try to use both types of calendars. So what are the next steps? Because obviously this is just one piece of the time management puzzle. Sure, this is going to help many of you. This is going to help many of your clients, or if you're a student, it's going to help you in some way with time management and getting a better handle on it. But it's not the complete picture. It's one piece, as I said. So I have an entire course, and I have designed with 3 more about 20-minute videos, much like this, a webinar like this, sections on planning your time, which is helping to prioritize your time and so that you're focusing in on those things that are important to you. The second one is on mapping your time, and that's a time scheduling tool that just has helped me tremendously in my life and my 2 teens as well. And then finally, sharing your time, which is an accountability tool, because a lot of times we get through and we think we're doing great, and then we actually don't stay accountable to the things we put into our planner. and our time management systems. So this 120-minute course, this video being one of them here, would regularly be around $100, but I would like to offer it to all of you for a $45 investment. It will not go live on my website until November 7th, and during that time, it will stay to $45 for you, but once it goes live on the 7th, it will jump up to $55. So if you're interested in signing up for the rest of the course, I would love for you to just email me, and the subject line will be all taken care of for you. It'll say sign me up, and I can get you the details. I would also really love it. I love to have people join my communities because I learn so much from you, and I like to give away tips and help people as well. But together as a community, we really are strong. So on Pinterest, I pin a lot of things that will help with study skills and just other things that might be related. Twitter, follow me at TherapyLearnSVC. I'm on Facebook at Therapy and Learning Services. You can through this link here. And then I also do a bi-weekly blog talk radio show, 15-minute show audio podcast that's also available on iTunes, the Therapy and Learning Services show. And I really would love if you would subscribe to the show or on iTunes and take a listen. And if you do take a minute to listen, I'd really love it if you'd write me a review. So at this time, I just want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was great. I love to share this information. If you can't tell from my voice, I'm really passionate about this stuff and could talk about this all day. So Skylar and StudyRight, I want to thank you for having me, and everybody take care.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate having you on here. Hopefully everyone has been able to get something really valuable out of this. Like we said, in your email, you'll be getting a link to download that visualization timetable tool there. So Jennifer, great content. If this seems like something that could be helpful for you or for your student, we'd encourage you to check out her materials, email her, and take advantage of that discount. And also check, we've got resources on StudyRight.net. Thanks, guys, so much for finding time here on this Tuesday evening to be with us. We hope you have a great week.